Hey friends, Shadylikeatree here, and welcome into Reminiscing with Shady, episode 87. This is Donkey Kong 64. Donkey Kong 64 was developed by Rare, published by Nintendo, of course, for the Nintendo 64. It was released on November 24th, 1999 here in North America. It does have some single-player elements and some multiplayer elements as well to it. Donkey Kong 64 is one of only 3 Nintendo 64 games that require the expansion pack, the other 2 being Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask, and Perfect Dark. That expansion pack provided additional RAM for better graphics and a bigger environment, and this environment is rather large for not having any of the loading screens that some of the other games that I've previewed here in Reminiscing with Shady have, or some of the upcoming games will have. One of the things I wanted to talk about this game was that, Donkey Kong is one of those iconic, characters in video games. He's a Nintendo legend. Donkey Kong is really one of those characters that's highly identifiable by everyone in kind of mainstream culture. If I see all these surveys all the time on Twitter and Facebook of parents where kids have said, who is this character, who is that character, and they show all these Nintendo characters that some of which I can't even name, and almost always the parents get Donkey Kong and Mario correct. That's just kind of speaking to his cultural significance, dating back to when he was kind of a Mario villain back in the day, if you will. A quick note about the gameplay. We do jump around a little bit as I'm about to share with you some story about this game and my experiences with it. I'm pretty terrible at this game, and I had forgotten a lot about it, back in the day and how it worked and what I needed and things along those lines. So I did quite a bit of backtracking and kind of jumping around. So you'll see me kind of make some jump cuts and things along those lines through this gameplay. But I wanted to just kind of showcase this game for you because of two reasons. One, I was really bad at this game. I mean, I was just bad. And to give you an example of how bad I was and still am, the first opening level where you have to jump from the tree to various vines and swing around, right after the training mission, I don't believe I show you that level. And right here, like, they're these floating vines. I am so terrible at these. It is unholy bad how bad I am at those. I spent 2 hours on the first level trying to remember how to jump back and forth across them when, in all actuality, it's really not that difficult. You just have to wait till you get kind of the end of your momentum and just jump, and then the CPU kind of auto-propels you to the next one automatically. So it's not even really that difficult, but for some reason, I'm just not capable of doing that. I wanted to too talk about Donkey Kong and kind of its cultural significance before we get into some more stories that I have about this game. It was one of those games where, there wasn't a lot of perceived violence. As you can see me there, right there, fail to grab the thing. I've talked about this before when I did the Reminiscing with Shady Croc episode and some of the early games of my childhood, this being one of them. This was a game I was allowed to play at friends' houses because it didn't have any true violence. It has kind of cartoon violence, and there's not, a lot of guns and destruction and things along those lines that, my mother didn't really care for. I talk about that in Croc, and Spyro too is another game kind of like that. That this is one of those games where, it's fun and it's not overly violent. The cartoon violence is kind of comedic in effect almost, and nobody really dies. They just disappear, as you saw from that guy right there that I just knocked out to get some health. Donkey Kong 64 is, a very popular game. It's received a lot of high praise. Metacritic gave it a 90 out of 100. Well, not gave it, but Metacritic has it as a 90 out of 100. You see a lot of 9s out of 10s, high 8s out of 10s, things along those lines from when it came out. And what's really interesting to me about Donkey Kong is that its use of the cinematic. Now, a lot of modern games today, they use kind of the voice-over mechanic in cutscenes, and this game didn't. This game was a text-based game similar to Mario 64 of the time, and this game is also very similar to Banjo-Kazooie in that style. You know, it was very early of the style, and I don't think that we had the space quite yet on the Nintendo 64 for those types of games. There's not a lot of voiceover in the cutscenes, but you know, it was an interesting style of the day to have sort of follow a creature around for a given period of time and just kind of see him do his thing, and then just kind of progress kind of around and things like that. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of character voiceover driven story. It was all you know, text based like it is in this game. But one of the things I do like about this game is that you have all the different Donkey Kong characters. You have Donkey Kong, you have Diddy Kong, you have Cranky, Donkey Kong's dad. You know, we have Lanky Kong, of course. Trying to think of who else is in the game. I think is Kitty Kong in the game? I think Kitty Kong is also in this game. But yeah, you have a bunch of different Kong characters, Donkey Kong's friends that are able to come and help you on missions and help you do things, and kind of just make the game more fun and enjoyable than the same, you know, 8 to 10 hours and even longer in these older games that, you know, you can get accustomed to, that can kind of help make the game stay fresh and keep from going stale. But enough about the game and its cultural significance and things along those lines. I think it's finally time to share a story of when I played this game as a child. So as many of you know, I never actually owned a Nintendo 64 until I started doing the Reminiscing with Shady series a few years ago. And as a child, my only exposure to Nintendo 64 games, as I fail once again, is... It was over at a friend's house. I had a friend who I used to go to school with in elementary school, and this was way after the PlayStation 2 had come out. And we would play games in the morning for an hour while, you know, my mom dropped me off there because she had to report pretty early in the morning. I think at like 6 o'clock, and school didn't start until 7:30. So we would just play Nintendo from that time. You know, we'd have breakfast. My mom would bring breakfast, and we'd play Nintendo after breakfast was over until we had to leave, which was, you know, it gave us a good hour a day every day for 3 years that I played Nintendo, essentially, with this family and this a friend of hers and this kid and whatnot. And I get another golden banana there. And so one of the highlights of Donkey Kong was we had this sort of friendship born out of the fact that I was really terrible at this game. He was really good at this game. And we kind of bonded over the fact that he could help me get better and kind of improve. Because I've never really been bad, per se, at video games. But I've never been, you know, a world-class player at anything I've played. I mean, I'm pretty good at NFL Street because of all the time and hours logged into that game. And there's a couple others that come to mind. But, I mean, as a whole, I am just bad at these games entirely. And so he kind of helped me improve, and we would sit there and we would just play, and he would tell me what to do. And then we'd do, like on Mondays, we would do a level. And he would play the level, and he had a save, and I had a save. So he would play his save, and he would play the level, and I would kind of see what to do and kind of figure out how to do it and what strategies worked and didn't work. And then it would come time for me to play the level on, say, Tuesday, and then we would do that. And then on Wednesday, we'd do the same thing. And then on Thursday, you know, and then on Wednesday, I would have a turn again. And then on Thursday, he would have a turn. And then I would take a turn on Friday. And we'd play the same level back-to-back days. But I was able to see as a, you know, I'll say 8 and 7-year-old how to beat this game and understand it. Probably because he had already beaten it a couple times. But at the same time, you know, I was able to kind of figure it out and figure out what to do because, you know, it's not easy when you're that young, and, you know, video games weren't as easy as they are now for sure, most certainly. Now, flash forward a few years until I'm, I'll say 17 years old. I was in high school at this time. I think I was like a junior or a sophomore or something along those lines. And I was at a retro game store, and there was a kid in there who was my age, my age when I first played the game. He was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I was in there picking up, I forget what, I don't really remember, and he was kind of just like looking at Donkey Kong, and he was trying to understand it, I guess, to some degree, and just try to figure out what exactly he was going to be buying if he purchased this game. I think at the time this Donkey Kong was like, I don't know, it was like $15. It was a lot less than it is now, a lot less than it is these days. And so he was kind of considering whether to purchase the game, and I had told him the story I just told you, about playing it with my friend, and how it was really challenging for me, but at the same time it could be really easy for other people, so he could have the opportunity to figure out how he wanted to best play the game moving forward, and he could go from there, and he could really take the time to get all the achievements and really master the game. And it would be a fun experience because, despite it being a little outdated, I think it still holds its intrinsic and its fun factor, despite the text-based annoyances and some of the minor, I won't say flaws, but I'll say mechanics that have since been improved. What's really interesting to me about this game, kind of looking back on it and looking back on my time, is how innovative games like this, games like Mario 64, games like Banjo-Kazooie are, because they essentially feel open world even though they're level based. And today, it's so much easier, I think, for a game to be open world than it was with the limited space, the limited technology, and kind of the newness of video games back in the day. But I think that this was a really good example of doing the absolute best you could with what you had to work with, and certainly knocking it out of the park, as evidenced by the review scores and the amount of people that really, really like and treasure this game. But that's all I have to say for you guys today. Thank you very much for watching Donkey Kong 64. This has been Reminiscing with Shady, episode 87. I hope you guys certainly enjoyed, and I hope you check out next week's episode and any previous episodes that might interest you. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.